Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hopefully, welcome back to USA Global TV and Radio, where we provide world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK, and it's my honor and privilege to be here hosting this show, another episode of A Woman's Prerogative. We actually have two episodes every Monday, this one and one following 2 hours later, so do stay tuned. Welcome to all of our viewers at E360 TV and all of our loyal followers across all the platforms, ROKU worldwide and Amazon Fire, as well as social media. Our show today is all about navigating new normals, how kids are coping since the pandemic. I am not here alone to do the show, as you may know if you've watched before. So let's welcome our team. Joining us from the United Kingdom, from London, it's Caroline HEWARD. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Good to see you.
And always good to be here on this platform, and especially on this show. It's always good fun.
And for those who don't know, Caroline actually hosts the second episode of A Woman's Prerogative, which again is coming up in 2 hours. Thank you for that, Caroline. All right, let's also welcome from the United Kingdom, from London, Dr. Justina MUTALE. Hello.
Hello. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure
so good to
be
see
here.
you.
Good to see you.
It's nice to have you here as well. And Dr. Madalene Chan is on holiday today, so we will miss her. We say hello. And joining us is one of our previous team members. We're super excited to have her back, Janetta Barry and the Epiphany Process. Janetta joining us from Kenya. Hello, welcome.
Hello, everybody. So special to be back, to be with you all again.
Good to have you back, Janetta.
Thank you.
We are thrilled to have you. So thank you again all for being here. And I'd love to have you go around and share a little bit, about a minute and a half, about the work that you do and the value that you bring to this world. So our new viewers and even our existing viewers are thinking, wow, I didn't realize she did that. And let me get in contact with her. We'll start with Caroline. Please do tell us.
Thank you, Dr. JACALYN. And an absolute pleasure to have Janetta Barry with us today. I'm very excited because she has always good fun and good sharings. I'm known as the Harley Street Stress Expert, and I help people bust their stress. Now, I don't just do things by halves. I bust my own stress. And on the weekend, I bust through an anxiety that I was feeling and never resolved, in terms of losing my home and not getting enough finance to cover it, and losing possessions. I actually lost my handbag, but I didn't really. And I did a glass walk to break through. And that's the kind of work that I do to be the best I can possibly be, to help you break through your stress, anxiety, depression, your physical, emotional pain. And I look forward to helping you bust your stress.
Bust your stress. We're still waiting for the single. Thank you, Caroline. Let's go over to Dr. Justina MUTALE.
Hi, I'm the author of The Art of Iconic Leadership, Power Secrets of Female World Leaders. I am a gender advocate, and I advocate for the achievement of gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls, especially focused on leadership. For I believe that until women can sit at that high-level decision-making tables, until the women's voices can be heard and their perspectives can be taken into consideration, only then can we have to start with gender equality. And of course, only then can we have human prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said. Thank you, Dr. Justina. And over to our special guest, Janetta.
Well, I am co-founder of a process known as the Epiphany process, something that I researched and studied 9 months after I lost my 16-year-old daughter Jenny to suicide after she and I argued. I didn't believe I could ever get through it. I knew that I needed to find something that was accurate and able to get me through. And it did. And I've helped many people over the last 17 years around the world to do the same. I've helped terrorist attack victims. I've helped kids who are self-harming, not getting out of bed, not washing, not eating, writing really awful notes. And they're all living normal lives. And interestingly enough, this year, I'm dealing with a lot of men. And so a lot of men and a lot of pilots, which is very interesting. And also I'm founder of World Jenny's Day, the charity attached to the Epiphany process, which uses performing arts and the arts to normalize and soften conversations around depression and suicide ideation.
Thank you, Janetta. Thank you, all of you, for all the incredible work that you're doing to help people across the world. I'll just give a quick overview. In addition to hosting about 5 or 6 shows, I am typically behind the camera producing. And it's interesting, I had a couple friends stay over the weekend and I showed them all the steps involved and they're like, wow. So it does take a lot of time and focus, and you have to have a good memory. So I'm very grateful for that. And I'd like to just announce that for anyone who's interested in joining our team, you can go to our website. We've added a brand new page called Join Us. So there's no mystery. There's all the information that a person needs to find out what they need to join our team. And then when I'm not doing this, I'm teaching fitness classes, I am writing books, and I'm doing coaching. So let's get into our topic. Who wants to start with their thoughts about navigating new normals for children?
I'm quite happy to start, Dr. Jacalyn, because I speak to a lot of young people, and I've made it a bit of a thing to do because it has been concerning me how our young people are coping. Some are not coping, and some are self-harming. Some of them are not finding a way through it and are suffering high levels of anxiety. And I'm very pleased to see some people at meditation evenings. I'm very happy to see some young people when I'm on my travels doing different types of activity in terms of their studies, a lot of social media. And so there's a lot of different things that our children seem to be. There's like sort of 2 camps, I feel. Ones that are suffering with the anxiety and don't know how to navigate it. And then there's another camp that seem to be finding solutions, that are actually exploring meditation, consciousness, and looking at how they're behaving and how they're responding to things, and very aware consciously about how they think and feel creates their experiences in their lives. And I feel that there's an awful lot around now about how they cope in terms of the mental disability that they're experiencing and becoming more abled mentally to cope with anxious and stressful situations.
Thank you, Caroline. Who would like to comment on what Caroline shared?
Yeah.
Eeny, miny, mo. You don't you know?
I think, yeah, carry on, Justina.
Yeah, as Caroline says, there's a lot of heightened anxiety in a lot of young people because of what happened during COVID when they were all locked in, and most of them, most of us, in fact, the only communication to the outside world was the phone or perhaps the computer in Zoom meetings. But then for young people, that school-going age young people, those families that were lucky and well-to-do, of course, had computers and the children could take online classes. But then we have the other set of people that do not even have computers. And there was a case here in the UK where even though the family had a computer. They had 3 children of varying age and varying grades at school classes. So sometimes it would happen that the teacher could set a time to teach the children almost at the same time for all the 3 of them, but they have different teachers, and maybe one of them even went to a different school. So there was that commotion where then the children, you don't know which child to give the computer to. Who should you give preference that they should continue with their education? So there are gaps in some of the children's educations, and so while those who could continue learning online maybe tried to catch up, other children couldn't, those that couldn't learn online. And also there are different ways of learning for some children and also for some people. For example, myself, I prefer, even in meetings, I prefer in-person meetings rather than being on Zoom. I find it totally impersonal to be meeting and talking to people on Zoom. So there's that social, and then the children become antisocial, like, keeping to themselves, because for those 2 years, especially those children at the, for example, if they were 5 years old and then they lost the 2 years and then came out when they are 7, or even those that were 7 and came out when they were 9, that is quite a dangerous age at which the children, the way they look at the world and how they communicate with the world and how they socialize is important, but then they couldn't socialize for those 2 years. Some of the children in some countries, because they were found themselves locked out with people that were abusing them. As a result, for example, there was a report that in Kenya, about 300,000 girls below the age of 15 became pregnant during that lockdown. And these are children that were locked in with their own families. And to imagine that, so the impact, the post-pandemic impact, is that they ended up either becoming parents, or those that had an abortion. It's a traumatic thing to go through at that age, to have an abortion, or in fact, just the act of them that they were subjected to in order for them to become pregnant. And this is something that is going to be a lasting impact on them, a trauma that they would have to live with for the rest of their lives. So there's a lot of negative stuff that happened. But then there are a few children that those that are perhaps introvert, or they love spending time with themselves, found time to be very creative and came up with a lot of creative stuff. But I think for the majority, it had a negative impact.
Thank you, Dr. Justina. I'm wondering, you had mentioned families that have one computer in these scenarios, because I really don't know. Do the children each have their own phone? Is that pretty typical?
The phones, most of the time, the children have each their own phones, but some families, this is something that came out in the news, where the family only had one computer and they had 3 school-going children.
So they'd have to figure out how to share it so that they can all do their work.
Yes, and then there were some that didn't even have computers. And another thing is that with migrant families, for example, whose parents cannot even speak English. I think in the US, for example, it's common to homeschool children, but here in the UK, children have to go out to school all the time. If your child stays at home, the parent will find themselves in trouble. But then because of the lockdown, we had to adjust, and some parents then had to start kind of trying to homeschool their children. But those parents, there are some parents that cannot read and write. These are people who came here as refugees, and they have not even learned the language, so there was no way they could help their children at home. So those children went without an education for all that time of the lockdown.
Thank you. I think it's interesting, because I don't interact with children very much, and I don't have any children. I'm behind this green screen all the time. So it's good even for me to learn this. Janetta, what are your thoughts?
Well, all that Justina and Caroline is saying is without a doubt had a big impact, and I can back the stats on the Kenyan side of things of what happened to a huge amount of young girls ending up with unwanted or unplanned pregnancies, and all happening within the family. I think also in other parts of the world where there were severe lockdowns like we had in UK, there was a lot of children were exposed to a lot of home violence too. So it was really very, very difficult. And getting out of it, I have noticed that the children I've worked with since COVID, there's an easy triggering, because there's been a bit of PTSD with that time of being scared and are we going to die, and is the world going to be obliterated, and those severe lockdown restrictions that were especially bad. I know Australia was pretty bad, especially Melbourne, and we in UK had it really, really tight there too. So these kids have come out fairly traumatized. But what I have noticed in working with them is that because they've been through that, there's this deep sense of wanting to come up with really good solutions, not hopefulness, but solutions. And I'm finding children were easier than adults before lockdown to use my process with. But now there's a deeper sense of, I've got to get through this. I have to make sure. And when they have their breakthroughs, their quality of life has got even better than before lockdown.
Thank you, Janetta. I've heard from a number of people I know who have children, that children have harmed themselves. They've tried to take themselves out of this life, and that sometimes they just feel completely overwhelmed, and they don't have confidence in themselves to find a solution. And that's really troubling. It's very sad. And I know from the way I was brought up in my generation, it was basically like you're thrown out there, like figure it out yourself and come up with the answer. But I know from people who have children that are maybe XYZ, that they did a lot of the protection of the children, and they enabled them in a lot of ways, their own word, enabled, instead of letting them focus on drawing from within. What are your thoughts about that? I know it's a big topic, but just any part of it.
I'd like to add my thoughts to that. Yes, you're absolutely right. And I'm seeing a lot more younger children now at conferences, personal self-development conferences and events and networking. Yes, on the weekend there was, I spoke to a little boy that was 9 years old, and he was on the stage performing and doing different interventions. And he'd been in this personal self-development world since he was 3 years old due to his mum. And she was very involved in it as well. And so it really heartened me to see that there are children that haven't had that exposure, which have been finding it very difficult. And I've certainly had calls from mothers and fathers who have been desperate, reaching out to me saying that their child has tried to end their lives and they are just completely beside themselves. And so I've helped those people, and because they can't see anything. And that's the problem, that when they're in a state of fear and anxiety, that appears real to them, even though then that is not there now. They're still internally feeling an incredible amount of fear. And so there is a challenge for those children to see past that and past where they can go with it. So it is very unfortunate, and it's fortunate, and I'm hoping that there's enough out there, there's enough support and help from outside organisations looking at what's happening to our children, because as Janetta Barry mentioned, that we now have a pandemic that is actually more anxiety and much more a mental health pandemic and trauma that our children will have to cope with. And it is important that we recognise that and be there for them in whatever way that we can to nurture them through this trauma, because even though it's in air quotes over and the lockdowns are not there at the moment, they may come back, and if they do, how are they going to handle it? It's important to give them the space to express, and I feel that that's the way forward, to allow them the space to say what's going on, what they're feeling, because in my time when I was growing up, it was children are seen but not heard.
Thank you, Caroline. I know. Oh, go ahead, Janetta.
Yeah, I wanted to add on to that, because that's very profound what you're saying, Caroline. And I think the other thing that often gets forgotten when a lot of people a lot of families and a lot of therapists and a lot of motivational people are forgetting also, is that actually it's just as important to work with the family and get the family to understand what they're going through as well, because so much attention is often put on to the child or the children alone, forgetting what an effect it has on the family as a whole. So to be able to give the family some coping skills and some empathy and understand what they're going through, trying to protect and bring out this child or these children back to their full capacity, it's overwhelming, and that's often forgotten.
Excellent point. Thank you, Janetta. I was speaking to somebody, I think just yesterday, actually, we were talking about the fact that there seems to be a proliferation of drugs and overdoses, especially among young people. And in this conversation that we were having, it was basically, how are they getting access to it? Why are they doing it? And so one of the terms that was coming up, and it's come up here today, is PTSD, that they were really traumatized by something. Would somebody like to take a stab and explain to our audience, in case they're not sure of it, what is PTSD? Is it curable? Is it something that you have the rest of your life? Caroline, yes.
As a resident therapist, post-traumatic stress disorder is the name for it, and it's what happens when you're in a stressful situation. You handle it, and then when you're in a calmer situation, you experience triggers. It might be a smell, it might be a song, it might be something that's familiar, but it'll be anything small. It can be a word, it doesn't matter what it is, or a feeling inside. It's a trigger. And then out of the blue, in a very calm situation, they can suddenly experience the trauma that they didn't actually handle at the time of the event, of when they were going through the experience that they didn't handle. But what happens is the body literally shuts off the mechanism of the emotions and feelings in order to be able to cope. That's just the way that the body functions. And when it shuts down to be able to cope, it then moves into the mind, and it literally goes through without the emotion. But then the emotions can come up after the event from triggers. And yes, absolutely, it is, in air quotes, curable, and it is behavioral, and it's the triggers, and it's about looking at what's creating the experience and going back to that and unpacking the triggers so that they can actually feel safe to feel and express whatever it is, anger, sadness, loneliness, whatever's coming up for them, even tears, for them to be able to move forward. And post-traumatic stress disorder, it sounds really big, but it can be if you've had a handbag stolen, it can be if you've been mugged. And it also has the other side of, sort of the more dramatic events of being in a terror attack, or indeed in the situation that we were in lockdown. So it has many different effects from people, and it should never be trivialized if you've been mugged, or if you've just had your handbag stolen, because it's always a violation of your space in terms of being able to cope with overwhelming situations, and it's usually a threat to life. And so there's a lot of people that are in this experience of post-traumatic stress disorder. It's the trauma after the stress has happened.
Excellent. Thank you, Caroline. I'm going to go over to you, Dr. Justina, but I just wanted to add, I think also from my own experience in caring for my mother for 3.5 years with dementia, I think that's also, you know, that to me fits into that category. By the way, it's my mom's birthday today. Happy heavenly birthday. Let's go over to Dr. Justina for any comments that you'd like to add about the discussion so far.
Yeah, I agree with both Caroline and Janetta, and especially on the point of empathy in dealing with these children and these families, because for some families actually lost people during the lockdown. So some people might have died in the hospital and they were buried without a funeral, so to speak, and without when they went into hospital or fell ill, their family were not allowed to go and see them. So a lot of children, I think, are kind of traumatized in that, for example, if they had a grandmother who suddenly fell ill, even a brother or sister or a parent fell ill and went to the hospital and they weren't allowed to see them. And then they never came back, and there was no funeral, no way of saying a proper goodbye. And then also, because there were people dying during that time, the children were also that knew that somebody in the family had died, were thinking, oh, perhaps we'll also die, because of even the way the news was relayed. Then there were also all these conspiracy theories of saying, oh, after 2 years, those who've had the vaccination, people will just start falling down. So this is still in the minds of a lot of young people. I remember the other day, my daughter asked, oh, remember, Mom, they said that those who took the COVID vaccination, after 2 years, they will just start falling off and dying. And also, just when the pandemic was coming, for example, there was an international pronouncement that people in Africa would just be falling and dying in the streets like flies. You can imagine the children in Africa thinking, oh, perhaps it's tomorrow, perhaps it's the next day and this day and that day. So that anxiety, that worry, that trauma of thinking tomorrow they might not have their parent, or just themselves might not live. Because if you see a family member die, you see how close death is, and you realize how you realize that we are all mortals, and people can die easily. So the children start asking questions if they are the ones that are going to die next. And so this is all there. The family, those children that lost their families, even up to now, they are traumatized in the way it happened, how they never said goodbye. And then they have the worry of thinking perhaps next time it will be us. And that's why this thing you are talking about, children running to drugs as a quick as something to soothe themselves. There's also been a rise of vapes. These are, I don't know whether they're electric cigarettes, or I don't know what is in them. But just the other day, they talked about this school where they put something to monitor the children, and they put a trigger that if somebody smokes that vape, it will go off. And the thing went off over 300 times in a school. So it means over 300 children are trying to latch onto the vapes just as a way of finding comfort for themselves. But then we've also read or seen on TV, it's been saying that the vapes are not good for the lungs. They're just as bad as cigarettes or even worse. But young people age of 8 to 16 are really all just wanting to be using these vapes as a way of comfort. The way people that smoke, when they are stressed, then they'll say, oh, I think I need a cigarette to distress. You know, young people are taking the vapes, which has a negative effect on their health.
Yeah, it's really profound. I happened to read those articles that you're referencing also, and I think part of where they were putting whatever the measurements, the device was in the bathrooms of schools, and
Yes.
that's where the kids were going to vape. And I also read the article about how vaping is probably worse than cigarettes. And yet it seems to be more and more. I mean, you can't go for a walk anywhere. If I'm in New Jersey or Florida, people are actually vaping or smoking pot or whatever right there in the public domain. So one of the other things that I saw recently was that parents are now being held accountable for the behavior of their children. So in other words, if their child commits a crime, the parent might go to jail. How do you feel about that, about parents being held accountable?
There was a time that took a negative turn to that. There was a story about a child that didn't like the mother because they thought the parent was strict and was always trying to put them in the right way to control them and tell them, you can't do that, you can't do this, and you can't do that. And when the child read that if a child doesn't go to school for so many days, then the parent would be imprisoned. Then the child started skipping school, so that they could imprison the parent, so he could be left alone and there would be nobody to be nagging him. So sometimes, of course, there's only so much that a parent can do. I grew up in a very big family, and I know that even if we were all in big families, you are all brought up by the same parents and given the same opportunities, same benefits, and everything. There are always different characters that come out of that family. You'll be surprised that in some families you find a priest and then you find a jailbird, but they both grew up in one family, same mother and father, given the same opportunities, sent to the same schools, but somehow one of them goes astray and the other one goes straight. So of course the parents are responsible for instilling good principles and qualities and values in their children. But there's a certain age that a child then becomes an individual and strays away from the parent, and they start doing things that they do them. Sometimes the parent wouldn't even know. There are a lot of times where a parent would just get a phone call that, oh, we've just arrested your child. And sometimes these children could even be coming from very good families, and you wonder why they are going to do what they are doing. I used to run a beauty pageant and we had just that weekend done a pageant, and the girls that participated had a lot of goodies that they took away from them from the show as part of their goodie bags, a lot of makeup stuff. But on the Monday, one of the girls was arrested in one of the department stores with her friend on her way from school. They passed through the department store and they were trying to steal lipstick and some other kind of makeup. She has just left a whole big bag of makeup at home, and she's still going into the shop to try and pinch from the shops. So we don't know where you can divide the responsibility of the child and that of the parent for the actions of a child, especially one that is grown up, one that is a teenager. Because when they become up to about the age of 10 to 12, they are always listening to you. But once they are becoming teenagers, they start having a mind of their own and following a different path of their own that they think, oh, this is better. Because then they look at you, oh, you're old, what are you talking about? So it's a very tricky situation of blaming the parent or imprison. And another thing is, if the offender is not held accountable by themselves, and rather instead of imprisoning the child or punishing the child, you punish the parent, then the child doesn't really understand that they've done anything wrong. So it doesn't matter what age the child is, there must be something in place to show them that what they did was wrong and they are answerable for it and they are held accountable, rather than going to take a parent, because then that child will still do it because they never felt the pinch. They never felt the pinch, or they didn't live the consequences of having done what they have done.
Excellent points. Yes.
Right.
If the parents are the ones being punished and then the child never doesn't have to pay a price in any way, they may end up feeling just guilty if they love their parents and they're close to her. If they're not close to their parents, like what you were saying earlier, they might be like, hey, who cares? I didn't want them around anyway.
Yeah.
Jeanette, I see you want to say something.
Yeah, I'd love to expand on all that you said there, Justina, because it's spot on. The accountability of the child is as important as the parents being there to do something about it. Having said that, I'm a mother of 4 children, and each child was needed to be dealt with very, very, very distinctly differently from the others. So my one child would be very easy to say you're held accountable. Now, the daughter that I lost to suicide, I only found out afterwards that her unaccountability was a form of acting out because she didn't have coping skills. And so it was a cry for help. And, another child of mine was easy peasy to bring up. And then another one was the one that challenged my every thought, word, and deed. So it's really, it's a case of being able to find ways and people to support you on how to make your child accountable and why they're not being accountable. And I think when parents have got that help and backup and support, it makes a big, big difference. Those skills and so on, we're not born with them. No parent goes to the university of bringing up children. Perhaps we should. But there definitely needs to be a backup and a support for parents to deal with each child individually and provide those parents with insight as to what's happening with those children and what the skills are needed to get those children through and be accountable.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeanette. I'm looking over at the time. I'm like, what? We're already 38 minutes into this. I feel like we just got started. So we're going to have to wrap it up. Caroline, I'll give you the opportunity to provide another comment on that topic.
Thank you. I was bursting to say what was coming up for me and really an extra add-on to what Janetta has said and what Dr. Justina has said is family therapy. It is a family situation. And sometimes the adults haven't coped. They might have lost their jobs, they might have lost their livelihood, and a lot of them have, and they haven't got coping skills, and they might be drinking, they might be taking recreational substances. And so the children sometimes are copying. And so it is just as much important to bring the family in with whatever's going on because it's affecting everyone. So family therapy is something that I would truly endorse so that everybody's involved and everybody gets an accountability of what's going on so that they can move through themselves as well as the child.
Thank you, Caroline. While we have you there, can you give some information about how people can get in touch with you and also about your crazy, ridiculous offer?
Yes, of course. Well, I help people literally, as I said earlier on, bust their stress. You can reach me on nomorestress@live.co.uk or call me on +44 if you're international. If you're local, UK based, 07523 120 189. You'll find me on all the social media platforms. My favorite ones are LinkedIn and Facebook. You can drop me a message there. And if I don't answer because that message has gone into spam, please send another message and or drop a comment on one of the shows so that I can reach out to you. I've got this ridiculous offer and it's £50 for a 1-hour breakthrough. It is absolutely ridiculous because we're going to be looking at 3 or 4 symptoms and breaking through. And I use root cause therapy where you don't have to deal with and talk about the entire trauma. You only have to, it's just the very, very small amount of information for me to be able to help you break through because I'm using root cause therapy, the situation, the experience that's repeating so that you can release the emotions and feel different and feel better and heal, more importantly, from that trauma. That's Caroline HEWARD, known as the Harley Street Stress Expert.
Thank you, Caroline. Lovely. Dr. Justina.
You can reach me on all my social media platforms. I am at Justina Mutale. Also, my website is www.justinamutale. And you can also Google me and you'll be able to find me there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our special guest, Janetta.
Thank you. You can get me at theepiphanyprocess.com. I'm on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. You can get hold of me there. And I offer an introductory call so that you can express what it is that you would like to embrace and have a breakthrough with. And then I explain how the process works, which is very different. I call it the yin and yang of science.
Thank you, Janetta. It's been so nice having you here today, and it was a really great discussion. I'm sure we could go on and on with another part 2, but Caroline will be hosting part 2, and hopefully Mariska will be joining you, or you'll be doing a solo again.
What fun.
To yourself.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We really do appreciate you. Now we're going to go over to our sponsors, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. This program has been brought to you in part by Zane Carson Carruth, etiquette and protocol expert, international award-winning author, television show host, and philanthropist. Thank you to Zane, our official diamond sponsor for USA Global TV and Radio in partnership with E360 TV. Zane is the author of The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever, as well as many other children's books. She's also the television host of Elegance, Polished Demeanor, and Posh Living, seen on USA Global TV and Radio.
Hi, my name is Zane Carson Carruth, and I'm the author of this book, The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever.
Reading is magic. Studies have shown that reading to your children lays the foundation for greater success in life. Reading helps develop language and vocabulary skills. It helps improve memory, and it encourages curiosity and inspires creativity. The benefits are immeasurable, and as a parent, you'll benefit too. In only 10 or 15 minutes a day, you'll be creating more memories and a bonding experience that will last for years to come. So take time to read to your children. Read them books about things that engage and interest them. Tales of fairies and magic fascinate children, and as everyone knows, the Tooth Fairy is at the top of the list. If your child loves magic, wands, adventure, and what child doesn't, you'll love reading them books from the trademarked series The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever. Follow along as Abella, the world's first tooth fairy, accidentally starts the tooth fairy tradition. Learn the tricks of being a professional tooth fairy in the book Abella Starts a Tooth Fairy School. Your child's imagination will soar as you read the adventures of Abella and her magic wand. These wonderful books are available at worldsfirsttoothfairy.com and at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Walmart.
To learn more about Zane, contact her through her website, zanecarruth.com. ZANECARRUTH.com. Order Zane's books and merchandise. Contact her about being a keynote speaker at your next event.